42-year-old Tijang Albert Aurelien was almost lynched by the angry population of Makak in the central region of Cameroon for killing his wife and her suspected lover. The population gathered in front of the Gendarmerie Brigade to see the end, as they are yet to believe that such a tragic incident occurred in their community. And at least one person has been killed, 2 children kidnapped, and over 500 houses burned in a recent Boko Haram attack in villages like Zelevet and Muskota, that is in the far north region of Cameroon. Several victims are now homeless, with some seeking refuge in mountains. Those were our major lead stories. The news in full in few seconds. Good evening, dear televiewers of Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much for joining me on today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. We begin with this tragic incident that occurred in Makak, where shock and consternation grips the population of Makak in the central region after 42-year-old Tijang Albert Aurelien killed his wife and her suspected lover. The population gathered in front of the Gendarmerie Brigade and are demanding that justice be served. Asia Lucy has more.
Rising tension among the population of Makak Central region. Lifeless bodies of 2 persons lying in their own pool of blood. 42-year-old Chang Albert Aurelien kills his wife and suspected lover.
Committed by a man of about 42 years of age, who surprised his wife with another man on the bed in a farm, and decided to, maybe in the course of exchange of words, they got into a fight, and this young man seized a machete and decided to do away with the lives of the wife and the boyfriend.
Sources say for about 4 years, the couple has been living in total disagreement. The situation had sent away his wife, Biyaga Micheline, to a village called Ngate, where she settled. While in the village, Biyaga Micheline worked in a plantation. Njang Albert Aurelien, getting the information, left Makan to Ngate just to kill his wife and supposed employee who worked in the plantation. The population, still struggling to believe their ears and eyes, stormed the Makak Gendarmerie Brigade.
There was a lot of tension in the air. The families of these people came. We had to do everything possible to stop them from doing the worst, because they were ready to kill the young man and they were ready to burn even the Gendarmerie Brigade. But thank God that we adopted we took some measures to be able to contain the crowd.
The divisional officer of Makak and brigade commander assured the population that investigations are on, while the assassin has been transferred to the prosecutor's office in Ezeka.
And still talking about rising insecurity in Cameroon, 1 person has died, at least 2 children kidnapped, and about 400 families now homeless following Boko Haram's recent attacks in some villages in the far north region of Cameroon. The internally displaced who are now stranded are sending distress calls to the Yaoundé administration. We have more in this report compiled by Mala Glory.
These women, men and children, are victims of the recent Boko Haram attacks, which led to the death of a security man, the abduction of 2 children, and huge material losses worth millions of francs CFA. Villages of Zelevet, Kramafa, and Muskota in the far north region were attacked by the armed men, burning at least 500 houses, leaving these families homeless.
Les BA sont venus attaquer.
They attacked the military, chased them away, and seized materials, attacked the population, burned our houses, and seized our foodstuff. That is, we slept on the mountain. They kidnapped 2 children, aged between 11 and 12 years, We don't know where they are and what has happened to them.
These desperate locals were forced to migrate to other areas for security reasons, leaving everything behind.
Today we can't sleep well. We don't have food to eat, clothes to wear, and world women around us suffer the most. We are homeless.
The abandoned villages are now occupied by this terrorist group, making it difficult for the inhabitants to return to their homes.
It means we cannot go to Krawa Mafa, Zeleveld, because these zones are completely occupied by the Boko Haram groups.
The people of Mayo most quoted cry over their losses and thus call for government assistance.
And this population are wishing that life returns back to normal so that they can go back to their various homes. And gendarmes have arrested 3 young men for faking a kidnap in the west region of Cameroon. A 28-year-old boy arranged his kidnap with his friends and demanded for a ransom of 3 million francs CFA from his father to secure his release. This incident that occurred at the Banok neighborhood in Bamenjinda has shocked many in that locality. Smagic and Gabriel now tells us how it all happened.
At the esplanade of the Gendarmerie Brigade in Buda, West region of Cameroon, 3 individuals are being presented to the press. These 3 were picked up by the elements of the Buda Gendarmerie Brigade after they faked the kidnap of their friend. But how was the plan notched? It was during a funeral in the neighborhood that he told me about his plans. He told me that he will bear the consequences. My own role was to make calls, and during this act, I never spent a night outside. I wrote a letter to his family because they could not recognize my handwriting.
La lettre donc on a fait, c'est moi qui ai donc fait la lettre. Donc tout ce qui est écrit sur la lettre vient par lui.
To make the father actually believe that he was truly kidnapped and that he should send the 3 million ransom demanded, the one who faked his kidnap will use a machete and cut off one of his fingers and send to the father. It was after the Gendarmerie Brigade learned about the situation that an investigation was opened, which led to the arrest of these 3 young men. The father had given 150,000 francs CFA out of the 3 million demanded. That was where we learned that the act was planned by the son of Mr. Tanifo. He was at a health unit where we went and picked him up. Then he gave the name of Teni, alias Esprit, who was already in between Bamboutus and Nous.
Dans notre circonscription, il était limitrophe entre le Bamboutus et le Nous. Avec la collaboration du commandant de brigade de Ditapon, nous avions mis une équipe. À l'arrivée, il était déjà maîtrisé.
It was an occasion for security forces to re-echo to the population to continue their collaboration with them so that such acts won't continue to occur in Buda. Generally, when such situations come up, the victims are afraid, not only for their safety, but also for the safety of the one kidnapped. I want to say that the complainant was really courageous. I am calling on the people of Bamboutus to collaborate with us, and together we shall ensure that everyone is safe. While the son of Mr. Tanifo is receiving treatment under tight security, his other friends are behind bars at the Buda Gendarmerie Brigade, waiting for justice to take its course.
And on to something else. The Martinez Zogo murder case is far from being over. Journalist Arnaud Froger of Reporters Without Borders is in Cameroon to continue investigations. In his most recent outing, the investigative journalist says he has never made any contradictory statements but has been consistent as he maintains that journalist Martinez Zogo was brutally murdered on the command of Jean-Pierre Amogo Belinga. Anabila Leke comes back to the most recent publication of journalist Arnaud Froger. Several months after journalist Martinez Sogo was found dead with his body mutilated, the national and international press reported widely on the gruesome act. Among the prominent organs was Reporters Without Borders.
Il n'y a absolument aucune volte-face. Martinez Sogo, journaliste camerounais, a été tué le...
In several televised outings, investigative journalist with Reporters Without Borders Arnaud Froger continues to make startling revelations on the Martinez Sogo murder affair. Contrary to reports that Arnaud Froger has made contradictory statements, the investigative journalist says and insists that he has been consistent in his outings.
Au terme d'une opération commando menée par les services secrets de son propre pays.
Arnaud Froger says Martinez Sogo was murdered on January 17 by commandos sent by individuals from his country, Cameroon, and it was on the command of Amogu Belinga, who is presently being incarcerated at the Kondengi prison.
Commandité, selon l'enquête officielle et selon notre enquête, par Amogu Belinga, qui est actuellement arrêté.
He says there now exist several cases of misinformation and diverse versions within the Cameroonian press.
Des informations, beaucoup de déstabilisation, beaucoup de diversion, beaucoup de...
Arnaud Froger in this most recent publication adds that international media organs have come to the same conclusion with Reporters Without Borders. It was a structured plan aimed or poised at silencing the journalist Martinez Sogo. Nonetheless, Reporters Without Borders isn't giving up on the Martinez Sogo murder case anytime soonest.
La presse internationale et nationale est arrivée aux mêmes conclusions que Reporters sans frontières.
Reason, Arnaud Froger is in Cameroon to continue with information and investigations on the Martinez Sogo murder affair.
Continuons à enquêter, nous continuons à informer.
And away from the journalist Martinez murder case, we now talk health. Over 600,000 malaria-related deaths have been recorded worldwide. A new malaria vaccine called R21 or Matrix M has been developed to aid the eradication of the deadly malaria disease. The vaccine, qualified by scientists as a world changer, is said to be highly effective, more than the first ever approved RTSS vaccines. Ghana and Nigeria are the first African countries to approve the R21 vaccine. Innocent Azet tells us more of how effective this new vaccine is.
The World Health Organization says it is time to deliver zero malaria. This through investment, innovation of an efficient vaccine, and its implementation to control and finally eradicate the destructive and killer disease. In line with this objective, a new malaria vaccine called R21, also called Matrix M, has been developed by scientists at the University of Oxford. The vaccine, described as a world changer, appears to be highly effective. Nigeria has also approved the R21 vaccine, thus joining Ghana to be the first two countries to approve it. Trial data from preliminary studies in Burkina Faso showed the R21 vaccine was up to 80% effective when given as 3 initial doses and a booster a year later. The WHO is also considering approving the vaccine to combat malaria, which is known to kill 620,000 people each year, especially young children between 0 to 5 years. Matrix M or R21 is the world's second vaccine for malaria and the first that ensures 77 to 80% efficacy over 12 months of follow-up. This is more than the WHO's efficacy target of 75%. The first malaria vaccine, RTSS, was approved by the World Health Organization in October 2021 and has been administered to over 1 million children since its approval. The new R21 vaccine is known to attack the sporozoite plasmodium, targeting the disease at its base, as this is the parasite that first enters the body and spreads malaria. The development of this vaccine comes after the innovative use of genetically modified mosquitoes to eradicate this devastating disease. According to scientists, such an innovative project aims at reducing the population of malaria-transmitting mosquitoes in sub-Saharan Africa, where 98% of malaria deaths occur. By reducing the population of malaria mosquitoes, the project aims to reduce the transmission of the disease. With this approach and the R21 vaccine, malaria is in danger. It should, however, be noted that the WHO is still assessing if the R21 or Matrix M vaccine should be pre-qualified for wider use. If and when approved, it will be used as complementary to the RTSS vaccine.
And on to something else. The long-standing brotherly relationship between Cameroon and Chad is being undermined by economic interest. The sale of ExxonMobil shares in the Cameroon-Chad pipeline project has generated diplomatic tension. Babila Jonathan tells us what the issue is all about in this report.
La présidence de la République du Tchad.
The battle for the control of 40% of the Chad-Cameroon pipeline continues. The legal battle took another twist after Chad nationalized assets which Savannah Energy had acquired from ExxonMobil months earlier. Both parties are in court for a second time. The International Chamber of Commerce in Paris had already ruled in favor of Savannah January 7, 2023 after Chad contested the $407 million sale agreement between ExxonMobil and Savannah Energy. The Central African nation argued that the agreement ignored the Chadian government's objections, including its right to first refusal in the event of an ownership transfer. 4 days after Savannah closed the deal with ExxonMobil December 7 last year, it said in a statement that the acquisition was conducted in full conformity with the requirements of the governing documents and the applicable law. It also announced the termination of an agreement to acquire upstream and midstream assets in Chad and Cameroon from Petronas. Savannah highlighted the January 7 emergency arbitration procedure under the International Court of Arbitration rules to protect its interests. Chad's response 23rd March 2023 was the nationalization of the Doba upstream oil assets formerly owned by ExxonMobil's subsidiary, ESO Exploration and Production Chad. A day later, Savannah said Chad's actions violated the conventions governing both parties and other stakeholders in the Cameroon-Chad pipeline project. It added that Chad has benefited from its purchase of ExxonMobil's shares because under its operatorship, the Doba oil field's historic production decline was immediately reversed, arguing that the conventions are subject to the jurisdiction of an International Chamber of Commerce court in Paris. The company has expressed determination to pursue all its legal rights.
On the same vein, ExxonMobil's 40% shares of the Chad-Cameroon pipeline transferred to Savannah Energy is still at the center of a legal dispute between the latter and Chad. The International Chamber of Commerce is yet to determine who should be in control of the shares disputed by Chad and Savannah Energy. Greater details on the Chad-Savannah legal contest with Babila Jonathan.
The construction of the pipeline transporting oil from the Doba oil field in southern Chad to a floating export facility in Kribi, Cameroon started in 2000. It was completed in 2003. At the time, it was hailed as one of Africa's largest public-private partnerships and the best method to reduce poverty in Chad. Since oil began flowing through the pipeline, the project has been affected by controversy and problems ranging from socio-economic and political to environmental concerns and human rights abuses. The project started as a joint venture with 3 oil companies and the 2 countries concerned controlling shares: ExxonMobil 40%, Petronas 35%, Chevron 25%, and Chad and Cameroon 1.5% each. Because of an unstable relationship with the government of Chad, Chevron sold its 25% share to the Republic of Chad. March 2020, both ExxonMobil and Petronas were reported to be seeking to sell their shares in the project, close to 3 years after ExxonMobil sold its shares to Savannah Energy Public Limited Company. This includes ExxonMobil's 40% stake in the Doba oil project and an oil export terminal. Soon after that, the government of Chad nationalized the acquired assets, which led to arbitration in an international court. Savannah initially wanted to also buy the shares of assets of Petronas, but the plan failed. The sale of ExxonMobil's oil assets in Cameroon and Chad has provoked tensions between both countries. In the latest escalation of the dispute, Chad recalled its ambassador to Cameroon. The Chadian government is angry over the fact that the terms of the $407 million agreement between Exxon and Savannah are different from what had been presented to it. Chad had nationalized the assets on its own side of the border, including Exxon's share of the over 1,000-kilometer Chad-Cameroon pipeline. In a statement, Chadian authorities said they had reached out to the Cameroon government to complain over what they qualify as unfriendly actions of some of its officials against the interests of Chad, but did not get any response. According to the statement read on Chadian national television, this is what obliged Chad to defend itself by calling back its ambassador.
And in a related story, despite the diplomatic and commercial row over the ownership of shares of ESO Chad, a subsidiary of ExxonMobil, the Republic of Chad is bent on going ahead with its plans of nationalizing the company. The country has gone ahead to create a public company known as Chad Petroleum Company TPC to take over ESO's shares. This is one of the major resolutions of an extraordinary ministerial council meeting chaired by the transitional president in N'Djamena, Chad. Fomi Armstrong Sanda reports.
The outcome of the extraordinary ministerial council meeting of the Republic of Chad reinforces the argument that the tension and the fight over the shares of former Exo Chad, a subsidiary of ExxonMobil, will last longer. Under the proposition of the Chadian Minister of Hydrocarbons and Energy, Chadian members of government deliberated and adopted the creation of a public company known as Chad Petroleum Company, abbreviated as TPC. The new public enterprise, according to Chadian officials, has as mandate to continue and effect the nationalization of the rights and shares of the departed Exo Chad. As operational objectives, the Chad Petroleum Company comes to reassure ex-Exo employees, Chadian technicians, experienced Chadians, and subcontractors of the former Exo Chad of continuity in the production of petroleum products and the management of the pipeline, according to the Chadian government. The government says the company comes to fill the legal gap created by the departure of Exo Chad. Ministerial meeting also stated that the sphere of competence of the newly created Chad Petroleum Company is limited within the management of the oil fields and the pipeline, different from the sphere of competence of the already existing Chadian Hydrocarbons Company, the SHT. The Council of Ministers ended by charging the country's Minister of Hydrocarbons and Energy to accelerate the operational kickoff of the company, which stands of strategic interest to the Chadian people. The Council of Ministers also discussed and adopted 5 other resolutions, among which was an amendment on the Electoral Code linked with a referendum on the Constitution and form of state as an outcome of the recently organized National Inclusive Dialogue of the Republic of Chad.
And some prominent personalities have expressed worries over the recent tension between Cameroon and Chad on the Savannah Energy affair. Honorable Jean-Michel Nincho, just like Professor Maurice Kamto, think President Paul Biya must explain the implications of his son in the affair because Cameroon doesn't belong to a private individual. Annabella Leke compiled some reactions and tells us more in her report.
Following rising tension between Cameroon and Chad over the Savannah Energy Petroleum affair, prominent personalities in Cameroon say the issue is delicate and must be treated as such. The president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, Professor Maurice Kamto, in an outing, says it is urgent for the president, Paul Biya, to clarify the implication of his son, Frank Biya, in the Savannah Chad affair, else public opinion would conclude that private individuals are using the name of the state for personal interests. This diplomatic tension can put into jeopardy not only the interest but the security of the entire country. Professor Maurice Kamto notes also that Chad has strong diplomatic ties with Cameroon, which shouldn't be thrown to the dogs for individual gains. And Honorable Jean-Michel Nicho on his part questions if it was for the Savannah ExxonMobil Chad Cameroon petroleum affair that a former Minister for Mines was killed, asking why the late Dr. Gabriel Dodondoke has not been replaced since his sudden demise. The Member of Parliament says proper investigations must be done. If not, the lives of over 30 million Cameroonians are at stake, to the benefit of who he described a monarch and his son at Etudi. Barrister Akeremona also reacted on his Twitter page. Transparency International, he says, defines corruption as the use of entrusted power for private gain. Influence peddling is therefore corruption. The Chadian government, according to Barrister Akeremona, seems rather angry over the aggressive support a supposedly private company, Savannah, got from certain influential individuals. Cameroon, according to him, might well be dealing with yet another case of corruption in high places. He asked the question too, who will stop these oligarchs? And as a result of the strong disagreement between Cameroon and Chad in doing business with Savannah Energy, the Chadian president Idriss Déby recently called back the Chadian ambassador to Cameroon in a communique in which he expresses dissatisfaction. Chad has sent several missives to Cameroon in that line, but the Cameroonian government is still silent.
And now we take this note streaming into our studio at the moment. The Catholic University of Central Africa has reacted to the recent outings of one of their staff members, Professor Claude Abbé, on the TV debate program Club de Lead on Vision Carte Television on hate speech and tribalism. The Catholic University of Central Africa says the institution has its aim to promote living together and love. The rector in a communique signed today says any immoral declarations from any of its staff members is severely sanctioned by the Catholic University of Central Africa. Thus, the institution is totally against the tribalistic outings of Professor Claude Abbé recently. That's it for the first part of the news. Talking Point is up next. Thank you so much for staying with us on the second part of the news. Today on Talking Point, I will be receiving Song Derrick. He is an economist and equally a civil society activist. We'll be focusing on the Cameroon-Chad pipeline project, which has generated diplomatic tensions. Good evening to you, Derrick. Today, we are going to be focusing on what I earlier said, diplomatic tensions between Cameroon and Chad over the sale by ExxonMobil of its oil assets in both countries to Savannah Energy. Can you detail explain to us what this rift is all about?
Good evening, Immaculate. It's always a pleasure to be on your platform, Equinoxe Television. I want to personally appreciate the management of Equinoxe Television for the good job they are doing and the services they are rendering to Cameroonian. You know, the saga between Chad and Cameroon on the Savannah PLC issue, we can only explain the little that we know from our research in the field. Chad at this point in time feels cheated. Remember, the grouping of the oil trade is a joint venture between 4 companies or partners. You have the Chevron, you have ExxonMobil, you have the Patronal, and you have Chad and Cameroon. And at one point in time, Chad had to acquire the 25% of Chevron, which is a US company, and they are controlling it. And recently, ExxonMobil has sold its 40% share, which is up to $407 million US. And according to Chad, there is something that is not going right. According to Chad, the rules and regulations, the terms of the agreement were not agreed. According to Chad, the departure bonuses were not paid. According to Chad, there is a plan of action for some persons to hide behind Savannah PLC to control their oil. Like I said, there is just so much about it. Chad has spoken and expressed their grievances, but the Cameroon government, on the other hand, has not spoken. So we can best say it from the little we know. And remember, we have had Mr. Elung Paul Che, who has been there. We have had Mr. Frank Emmanuel Bia, who has been there. And there is something fidgeting that Chad is not very okay with. That is why you see the first punch we have received is a diplomatic blow, where Chad is calling back her ambassador to make sure that maybe Cameroon should reply by making things right.
As an economist, why is Savannah Energy considered as a threat to the Chadian government?
Immaculate, that's still another tough one. But like I said, we are speaking from the little we know and we've gathered from our research in the field. This is what we believe and this is what we found out. Understand that ExxonMobil, that sold out 40% of its shares, which Chad forcefully nationalized. Chad feels like, first and foremost, the terms of the agreements are not respected. Secondly, Chad is threatened by the fact that there could be some big guns in Cameroon that are hiding behind Savannah PLC to control her oil. And because of this, they feel there is bad faith in the side of the Cameroon government, where they are going through ExxonMobil Savannah PLC to come and control their oil right in Chad. Remember, like I said, this process was a joint venture, and Chad already got the 25% control, but ExxonMobil had 40% control of the oil. But as it stands, it is even showing that there has been an agreement of 10% agreement of transfer of shares to Kotku, a transportation company in Cameroon. And you still understand all these things, they don't augur well with the Chad government. And because of that, they are beginning to be proactive. They feel like there is something fishy that needs to that is going on, and if they don't react on time, they may come to realize themselves when everything has been finalized. That is why you start seeing them trying to call back the ambassadors. It's just a diplomatic move, and rather than sending guns to the street, I'm sure they are just trying to tell the government on the other side, the Cameroon government on the other side, that we know what is going on and it is time for us to redress it. That's just my simple opinion about that.
So now, does the alleged involvement of Frank Biya in this diplomatic crisis between both countries not raise worries about the use of the seal of the state of Cameroon for private interests rather than for public, as speculated by some Cameroonians?
But if you know the way Cameroon is managed, Cameroon is managed by an individual. And that is why the ministers we have, the prime minister, whichever ministry you want to call in Cameroon, they do not speak from themselves. They speak because of high instruction from the head of state. And it goes to tell us that if an individual can represent Cameroon in Chad, and that individual does not hold any major office, like maybe being a minister of external relations, being a minister of communication, mines, and all the likes, the person is just an individual, but is using the seal of the state. It goes to tell you that that is how Cameroon is. Cameroon is about interest, and the interest is not collective. It's about individual interest. You will bear with me that there is the increase in the rise of the Frankist movement, which is to be political party planning to take over power. I'm not saying in any form that Mr. Emmanuel Frank Biya is not legitimate to be the president of the country. He is legitimate to be the president of the country. But there are things as at now that he does not have the authority to do. But unfortunately, the state we run is controlled by an individual who is the beginning and the end, who has the final say of everything. If he has decided so, who am I who does not have power? That is why at the level of the civil society, we call out every day. We call out on the population of Cameroon to stand for their right. It is unfortunate that those who have a say are quiet, and those who have nothing to do to cause the change are the ones speaking. But unfortunately, we will keep talking until one day when we can see the change that we desire for our fatherland, the fatherland that has decided to unfather us.
Now, what explains the silence of the Cameroonian government with regards to the issue, especially knowing the fact that the Chadian ambassador to Cameroon has been asked to come back to Chad? Should that not raise an alarm?
I will tell you categorically that I'm not a diplomat. I'm not an expert in the field of diplomacy. But I do think that diplomacy does not act as fast as possible. Although this situation needs quick and urgent measures. You know, Chad is one of those countries that assisted Cameroon in the fight against Boko Haram since 2014. And Chad is one of those countries that Cameroonians are living in peacefully. And if the Chadian government has decided to call back her ambassador to Cameroon, it shouldn't have taken so long for Cameroon to react. But trust me, I think that if the Cameroonian government is silent 4 days after, it should be because they are taking measures to do the right things. It's because they are taking measures maybe at the background, because that's how Cameroon has always been trying to negotiate at the background. But they need peaceful method. They need peaceful modalities. Remember, it's necessary to dialogue at this time. The government is silent, that's why you have a lot of public opinion wagging. Chadian government has spoken through its Minister of External Relations, Mr. Gata, and Cameroon government, the communication minister is silent, the Minister of External Relations is silent, the presidency is silent. We can only say what we know. They know the reason why they are silent, but to Cameroonians' opinion, like myself, it is time that the government talk to its citizens, clear the air, so that we get to understand the facts on the table. Because we cannot risk killing the bilateral relationship that we have shared with Chad. They have been friendly, and I must say. So let the government speak. It is their responsibility to do so.
Song Derek, an economist and civil society activist, speaking there. And that's where we end today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much for your keen attention. Stay in the company of more interesting programs on ETV. Have a lovely evening.